Recently, I went on the road to face two of the most prominent Satanists in the entire world, black magicians, Nikolas and Zeena Schreck. Zeena is the daughter of Anton Lavey, founder of the Church of Satan. This debate took place in a public auditorium, and I want you to see what happened that night when we had a showdown with Satanism. I would like you, please, to prepare yourselves for the high priest and priestess of the Temple of Set, directors of the Werewolf Order and Radio Werewolf, the owners of the Hell House of Hollywood, and indeed, the first family of Satanism, Nikolas and Zeena Schreck. Give them a hand, would you please, as they come out? Now, come on, you can give them a better hand than that. Come on, give them a better hand than that. Zeena, Nikolas, you meet again. Have a seat. Both of you seem rather appropriately attired in black, except for the shirts.
Little color tonight.
Little color. Man of color with us.
Right.
And you have the pentagram around your neck?
That's the pentagram of Set.
The pentagram of Set. Now, that's one of the things we're going to get into right off the bat. We're going to talk about you being high priest and high priestess.
Not high priest.
Oh, not high?
Yeah, we have
Priest
to clarify.
and
Priest and
priestess.
Just
priestess.
priest and priestess?
Yeah.
There's no high or low in Set?
There is a
high priest.
You're not there yet?
No, that's a jump. That's quite a jump. Yes.
What do you have to do to get all the way to the top?
Well, first of all, you have to understand the Temple of Set is an initiatory academy of the left-hand path. And the basic purpose of an initiatory school of Satanism, which you could call the Temple of Set, is to evolve and to develop one's soul to become closer and closer in alignment with that being we call Set, who is the Prince of Darkness.
Satan.
We'll get into that later, but Satan, in my view, is a rather corrupted and degraded name of something much older, much more noble.
So the big monkey monk in Egyptian black magic was Set.
The first Set is one of the oldest gods known to the human race. The ancient Egyptians recognized him as the Lord of Darkness, and many of his properties are certainly comparable to that figure that Judeo-Christianity knows as Satan. But as we discuss this, I think we should get into the differences
Okay,
as well.
let's lay some groundwork first in terms of what you all are about. I have a little brochure here about the Hell House of Hollywood. It says on the front of this, take a scarifying tour of Hollywood's haunted house of crime, horror, and the occult. And inside here, you are described as having rare and used books that span the spectrum of horror, occultism, crime, obscure objects of art, collector's item, curios, monster mania. It seems to me that a lot of what you do is based on fear, dread, horror. Would that be fair to say?
I would say absolutely.
That would be fair to say.
Zeena, why are you so preoccupied with fear, dread, and horror, death, skulls, darkness, evil?
It's not necessarily a preoccupation with it, but rather a being in line with it. The powers of darkness, the dark side, has always been something I've been attuned to. It's not a preoccupation.
Now, you say you were born a Satanist. I mean, you
That's
feel
right.
that you are part of some generational supernatural lineage?
Well, that's difficult to say. I do feel I was born a Satanist. I don't feel that simply by being born to a Satanist necessarily makes you a Satanist. But I do feel that they are born.
So you have this natural...
And to use the word Satanist, again, I would tend to feel is somewhat limiting and maybe somewhat outdated. There are more well-defined ways of
What do you want to
putting
call
it.
yourself? A Setian? A Satanist?
We call ourselves Septians.
A follower of the Dark Prince?
Well, certainly not a follower. And I think this
You're not a follower?
This
No,
is a good...
that's where this is a good opportunity to give some facts, is that we're not followers. That would imply the difference between a right-hand path religion as opposed to a left-hand path.
Now, and let me interrupt you at a couple of points here, because you guys talk about things that I know about that they don't know about. You use this term a lot. Right-hand path, left-hand path.
I think
I'm on the right, you're on the left, correct?
Maybe before we even get into the meat of the matter, we should define a few terms.
What do you mean by the left-hand path?
Let me start with the right-hand path. Now,
I wish you had started with the right-hand path, unfortunately.
that's one.
That's one.
Okay, we'll get you.
We have a chalkboard here or somewhere we can keep tally. Go ahead.
For semantic purposes, we use the phrase right-hand path to define those religions or spiritual practices that attempt to submit to a greater force, a God, a universal principle that unites humanity together.
So you put me and the Buddhists and the Hindus and the Muslims and everybody else
exactly.
all kind of in one category over here.
And let me clarify.
We're the right-hand path.
The right-hand path would consist of, in religions you'd be familiar with, Islam is the most radical right-hand path system. The very word means submission. Its cousins, Judaism.
Just but you think they're radical. You haven't met the people who listen to me. Okay?
Almost every major world religion is dedicated to not separating one's soul and empowering it and individuating it, but submitting it to a God. And in your case, submitting to Jesus Christ.
But you're not submitted?
We are not submitting. We are not, I'll use the common phrase that I'm sure many people in this room probably consider devil worship. We do not worship the devil. We use that archetypal figure, the devil, which we prefer to define as Set, as his specific name is Set, as a prototype, a role model, a companion.
But excuse me, but you do believe he's literal.
Yes.
You do believe he's literal.
You mean as an entity?
He is an entity.
He is an entity.
He is an entity above all entities. And don't you kind of feel, Zeena, that Set was given a bum rap? I mean, let's face it, when Moses went down to Pharaoh and said, hey, you let my people go or you are in big trouble, and got his people out of there and straightened them out to worship the true and the living God, that in fact somebody must have been on a wrong mission because Set...
That historic incident, or mythological incident, we can't say for sure. We won't argue the fine points. These are the historical facts we know. There was an exodus of certain foreigners in Egypt. They called themselves the Hebrews, though biblical archaeologists have seen that they may have been many groups. When they left Egypt, they were slaves, and the Pharaoh at the time was a Pharaoh who held Set to be the highest god.
Okay.
The theory is that...
No, wait a minute. You admit Pharaoh, Ramsey II or whoever he was...
We don't know for sure,
okay, but you admit that he was a devotee of Set.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And
well,
that
now,
was,
wait a minute,
that was not hidden at the time.
But he lost. His troops got drowned. He tried to pursue them through the Red Sea.
That's
and they all drowned.
God
conquered.
Well,
the water turned to blood. Frogs were all over the place.
Right.
We won. Have you forgotten this?
Well... Okay, in deference to the fact that we are in a house of worship, I will say that is the Judeo-Christian mythology of that historical event. We don't see it that way, but it's interesting. What is interesting about the so-called Exodus is that the Judaic and Christian philosophy may have really been formed there at that event. And Set was the ruling god of Egypt at that time. So therefore the Hebrews, or whoever the foreigners were who left Egypt, associated everything wicked, evil, diabolical, depraved with the major lord of the Egyptians, who was Set.
Are you saying then that in fact that's not true? It wasn't negative?
No, it was true.
It was true.
Yes. All I want to point out is this one etymological fact of the confusion of Satan and Set.
The fact that Set was in power then, that everything negative perceived with Egypt came from the ruling god Set at that time.
But Zeena, he's the Lord of Darkness.
Precisely.
Darkness,
he is the one to whom you
But this is where
turn to perform
Satan,
black magic. I mean, you
what
understand.
we're talking about is where the term, the
Okay, I
Judeo-Christian
understand
term
all that,
Satan
but we're
came
talking about
from.
darkness and black, and you admit you practice black magic.
Yes, I'm a black magician, of
Okay,
course.
so you have to understand that from our perspective, we're saying, well, wait a minute. This is evil. This is bad. This is wrong. Explain to me how the tables are getting turned. How do you take all this negativism and turn it into something that you want to devote your lives to follow?
The Lord of Darkness, the Prince of Darkness, the earliest manifestation of that entity or God that has shown up in so many cultures and religions, was not considered a negative force in ancient Chem or Egypt. He was the Lord of Darkness in the sense of spiritual darkness, of the night sky, of literal darkness. There was no implication of evil or moral turpitude until much later in ancient Egyptian culture when the myth of Osiris came in. When I'm sure you're familiar with that. Judeo-Christian morality has a different conception of moral behavior and of ethics than ancient Egyptian, Roman, Greek, etc. had. So it's a question of moral relativism.
It's a question for you of moral relativism.
No, not completely, because if I look at the Bible, which I do whenever I'm staying in a hotel, I'll look through the Gideon Bible.
God bless those Gideons.
But there wasn't
Amen.
one in ours. But there wasn't one in ours here.
What?
Nope.
There wasn't one?
Nope.
We will make sure to it. Somebody in this church rustle me up a Bible before they get out of this building tonight. They're going back to the room with a Bible, okay? Make sure. All right, okay. Yes. Can I ask
Well,
you?
to bring it up to date, I
Okay.
think you say, well, how can you reconcile taking something that's so evil and so dark and turning around into something good? To bring it into a modern context, you have to understand that this is all relative. It's something evil and dark to you and all of you because of your particular perspective, that based on your particular religious belief system, this would be evil to you. But based on our particular religious belief system, this isn't at all evil to us.
Doing black magic?
No, it's not at all evil to us.
You do spells?
I wouldn't recommend it. I'd have to say here and now.
What?
This is to work with these forces is a very precarious thing that I would not
say that again.
that I would not recommend.
I don't recommend it either.
We would agree with you on that point. We don't proselytize. We are not trying to convert others. Black magic is probably the most dangerous undertaking a human being could work with.
Amen.
And I'm not
Wait a
telling
minute.
these people
Nikolas,
here
you're
to experiment with it.
You're telling me
It's
black magic
something
is dangerous.
extremely dangerous.
Not only is it extremely dangerous, and not only would we say, obviously the people here tonight wouldn't tamper with it or
But
play
you do.
with it.
I
do because I am. It's a difference. I would even go so far as to say people who just dabble in it or experiment with it without fully understanding what they're getting into are really doing themselves in. It will come back to them in a very negative way.
Are you saying there are demons that could get them?
No.
You do
No.
believe in evil
See,
forces, evil
I don't-
entities.
Can
No, you do believe in evil entities.
Well, you're using
No,
words
see
and
here again,
terminology.
I don't believe in evil entities. I believe that through one's own abuse, use and abuse of such forces, that is what will do them in.
Okay, let me
Their
just
own
let
abuse of
me
these
sidetrack for a
forces.
minute here because
Okay.
I want to make sure we have something clear too.
Sure.
You have something called the Werewolf Order
Right.
and Radio Werewolf.
Right.
And the Werewolf Order is an organization that the two of you have founded and head up, correct?
It's really an anti-organization.
Yeah, it says here,
You can
it's a sorcerer's circle of thought, a state of mind accessible only by an inherent rapport with the mysterious, unnameable multiplicity of forces that form the nexus of the movement.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
What that tells me is this is sorcery conjuring demons
You would think so.
I certainly would think so, especially when right on the front of here it says the arsenal for cultural terrorism.
Yes, that's the most important.
You are a cultural terrorist.
I am.
And in your organization, you have produced some materials, including here, and you advertise this quite heavily, a Charlie Manson video.
Yes.
You met Charlie in prison, interviewed him, and you have a video you've done about him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's part of the left-hand path philosophy and development to look at corners of reality that frighten most people.
Most of us would like to put those corners in a corner very far away and keep the door locked forever.
That's true. And people who do that, who lock the hidden corners, the fearful things away, they very often overcome them. We suggest...
But what do you want? You want Charlie out serving hamburgers at Burger King? I don't think you would order one.
I do not. In fact...
You want Charlie behind bars?
I do.
How about Charlie dead? Executed?
That's just a legal question.
What do you want to do with Charlie?
I don't think we should get into a judicial matter. My point is, we look at and we study dangerous phenomena to incorporate that into ourselves and to learn more about our own being.
But why? Zeena, tell me. See, the whole thing is you people seem to be fascinated with evil, with the bizarre, with the dangerous.
Not fascinated with evil.
Well, why Charlie?
Because
Charlie's not a nice guy.
We're
Charlie's a murderer.
With
He's a drug
knowledge.
freak.
We're fascinated with knowledge. We're fascinated with enlightenment, and to study an individual.
Charlie is enlightenment?
Yes, definitely. To study an individual as Charles Manson will teach you more about human nature, more about mental illness. Than you should know.
We're not saying
to deal with any number of people.
What you're suggesting is, if we're a historian, to look at topics in history that were unpleasant, that historian is evil.
Charles Manson is only one example. There are so many others, but he's just one example.
Lycanthropy and real werewolves. Are there real werewolves? Are you a werewolf?
Everyone involved in the Werewolf Order considers themselves to be a werewolf. Now let me make the point, that doesn't mean the Hollywood horror movie idea of a werewolf. We mean a black magician who can transform themselves at will into other states of being using sorcery.
Wait. You believe in transforming yourself into other states of being using sorcery.
Which is a fairly good explanation of what the black magical quest is. Attaining mastery over the self to the degree that one can change oneself internally and make changes in the universe.
Now, what is all of this going to get you in eternity? What's going to happen to you when you die, Zeena? What do you believe?
Well, that's a very good question. Definitely immortality is a topic of our concern. Were I to have a glib, pat answer for you, I don't think that would be fair.
You don't know what's going to happen to you when you die?
Well, it may surprise you to see
we
that...
We don't have such a...
You don't know?
Let me put it this way. The Temple of Set, probably one of its primary concerns is understanding how the mortal psyche may become immortal.
But you don't know. You're still looking for the answer.
We don't claim to know a dogmatic and final answer.
Would you kind of like to know? I mean, I know.
The right-hand path is about saying, I know everything. I know it. I read it in a book. I heard it from a God. I know everything. The left-hand path...
I've got it in here.
Well, but where did you hear it from?
The Holy Spirit.
Okay. Somebody told you. We need to know for ourselves.
Well, how are you going to find out? You're going to get it from a book. You're going to get it from some kind of an experience.
We don't have...
get it from our self-experience. From our self-development.
All right, let's take another step here. And we're talking about the Temple of Set, but we haven't really acquainted these people with what we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. Now, you're claiming some historical relevance to the Temple of Set. The fact is that Michael Aquino, who started what is known in modern parlance as the Temple of Set, was an associate of Anton Lavey and the Church of Satan, that there was a split between the two. He went off, he started the Temple of Set.
Michael A. Aquino was the highest initiate in the Church of Satan in 1975.
And he had an experience. He met Set in the middle of the night, dictated this book to him,
Well,
right?
Michael Aquino performed an act of black magic in which he had the experience of receiving a book that he calls the Book of Coming Forth by Night. And that book was a recording of a ritual which began the Temple of Set.
But did this being, Set, appear to him? Manifest itself?
Set spoke through Michael
Set spoke
Aquino.
through him.
Mm-hmm.
So he performed a
which
ritual.
which is the function.
To us, he performed a ritual. He got a demon. This demon started talking out of his body. He wrote a book, and he said, "Goodbye, Anton. I'm starting my own thing." And he goes over here, and boom, we get the Temple of Set.
Well,
I mean, that's sort of my way of putting it.
Well, your way of putting it is extremely crude and simplistic, but there are more details to it.
Okay, so he goes over and he says, "That's it. I have nothing to do with the Church of Satan. I am starting the Temple of Set." And then shortly thereafter, you two came along and you joined the Temple of Set.
Well, not shortly thereafter.
Right at that
It's a
time.
good,
Well, the Temple of
no,
Set.
that was in 1975, a good 20 years.
So he'd
or
been
so.
going at it some time before the two of you came along and decided you were
Yes.
going to join him.
Right.
What then, may I ask, caused you to say, we're leaving the Church of Satan, we're joining the Temple of Set? My understanding is that you considered the Church of Satan to be nothing more than atheistic psychodrama, and that the real thing was in the Temple of Set.
That I would
That's-
agree with you.
that's
Is
true.
that fair?
Yes.
Yes.
So you left your background, heritage, upbringing, all of this, and you had your own exodus to the Temple of Set. What did the Temple of Set do for you that the Church of Satan didn't?
Well, what I found with the Temple of Set was not only the religious purity that was simply not there in the Church of Satan, which you have a furrowed brow, I don't know.
Well,
what
you use the
think
word
that
purity. You're worse than...
means. We have our own version of religious purity. When you mentioned the Church of Satan was dressed up atheism, that's basically all that I grew to understand it to be, although I always wanted it to be more. I always expected it to be more. I always strived to make it more.
So the Church of
So-
Satan wasn't satanic enough for you. It wasn't setting enough for you. It wasn't devilish enough for you.
You could put it that way.
Okay.
What the Temple of Set has is a means by which to measure your magical successes against others. You have a frame of reference. You have other magicians you can interact and work with. You have councils that have a sort of quality check to make sure nobody's getting too out of line.
Have you...
Let me finish too. It is far from a personality cult, as the Church of Satan has been known to be, because the Temple of Set has elected three different high priests at various times.
Have you... I want to know. Have you met Set? Experienced?
I have
felt?
experience.
Have you been like doing a ritual and you have felt the presence of
Absolutely.
Set?
I did just 2 weeks ago in Munich.
You were in Munich?
Yes.
What did you do, may I ask?
I can't tell you exactly what I did, but there was an extremely powerful working where I and about 15 other initiates invoked the spirit of Set, and it was incredibly powerful. I can't go into the details.
Set made his presence.
Absolutely.
Set appeared. How? Tell me what you
Made
can
his
tell
presence
me.
known.
He made his... You felt him.
Yes. He was there, yes.
Were you there too?
Yes.
You felt him too?
Yes.
Did he say anything to you?
Not in the sense of
Spoken.
Jehovah speaking
But did
from
he sort of
his
telepathically or
presence. You could-
intuitively
you could say
communicate
that,
to
but
you? What did he tell
We
you?
feel that the presence of the Prince of Darkness is a part of us, and he speaks to us through many means.
Did
Not
he,
all of which do we claim to understand.
Say anything about me?
All the time. Nothing but good things.
I'll bet. So you came away from this experience with Set feeling more empowered?
Yes, we could say that.
If I asked either of you, from my perspective, understanding my language and terminology, please bear with me, do you have demons? Do you have demons?
Well, I want to answer that in two ways, and I'll try to make
No,
it brief.
from my perspective.
The word demon comes from a Greek word, daemon,
Yes.
which simply means genius or informing spirit, informing intelligence. There's nothing about the word demon, if we look at its true roots as a word, that indicates this Christian concept of a possessing
but you
evil
understand, I'm not
being.
talking about the grammar. I'm talking about like what this book talks about.
A daemon in the sense of a wonderful, inspiring intelligence, as Plato referred to and Socrates. Yes,
Is this a hard question to answer?
No, not at all.
Do you have
Let me
demons?
say- let me
Have you
say,
conjured
too,
demons? Have you felt demons?
I think
We don't.
many people tend to think that we have demons like the Catholic Church has saints, or that demons hold these demigod places for us, and it's not like that at all.
I still haven't got an answer to the question.
Okay.
No, using it. You have felt the presence of Set. You've certainly done rituals in which you called on various forces of darkness to imbue you,
Right.
to take control of you, or to
No.
assist
No,
you.
not to take control of me.
Ah,
Not
you don't
even-
like the word control.
Not even necessarily to assist
To
me,
guide
but
you, to help you do curses, spells. Come forth, whoever, and
As we look
zapping, that
as-
sort of thing.
As black
I'm trying to think
magicians,
about your question.
as black magicians, we look upon the powers of darkness as our friends, as peers. We do not worship them. They don't control us.
You don't think they control you.
No. Nor do we view them as being particularly interested with our outcome, as your Jehovah would
What
be.
if you're wrong? I mean, what have I lost by loving people, by helping humanity,
Okay,
by
Well,
seeking
what
to...
have I lost
wait.
by living by my own code of morals, by my own standards that I understand to be right and true for
Well,
me?
if there's a heaven or a hell, and you end up in hell, you have
Now-
lost it all.
Now, your question is a loaded one. Setians
Absolutely.
Setians have love. Setians have compassion. Setians have all of the qualities that are considered to be good things in Judeo-Christian.
Where is a Setian home for the destitute and dying like Mother Teresa had? Where is a Setian
well, that's-
hospital? Where is a Setian home for the homeless?
That's the issue of altruism. We certainly...
You don't believe in altruism?
No. I have nothing against acts of charity and altruism.
You just don't want to do it.
I am not interested in doing it. It's not part of my spiritual path. I don't condemn them, but my spiritual path, which is the way of the Prince of Darkness, is my primary concern is the development and empowerment of myself, not of others.
But don't you get it? Don't you get it? That's the whole point. The Prince of Darkness focuses you on you.
That's
I
The
exactly...
think
Lord,
you're getting it.
the Lord of glory, of Calvary, focuses us on others. I mean, that's the whole point. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will be like the Most High. I. I mean, this
we're
is
not
what
disagreeing with
this
that.
is
You-
what Lucifer did in the beginning
Yes,
when he
right,
rebelled
right,
against God.
right.
You're saying that's okay?
Yes. Yes.
But he lost. He got kicked out of heaven. He was considered a carcass, rotten, and abominable branch.
Well-
You're on the losing side.
But-
Your buddy got booted. I mean, that's the bottom line.
In your book,
Look, Bob, you are making an intellectual mistake here by basing all opinions that you utter on one book.
Yes.
Well,
but it's not the only book, and it's not the only way.
No, wait. You're accusing me
So
of...
you're saying you have the only way. We don't discredit anybody else's beliefs for themselves.
we don't
we
agree
wouldn't
with them.
say we don't agree with them certainly, but we certainly wouldn't say, oh, we have the only one true belief. We have the only one true belief for us. Now, why isn't that good enough for you to say you have the only one true belief for all of you?
run the hospital.
But
There-
not for us.
Because there's a heaven and a hell, there's a God and a
you.
devil, and I don't want to see you
you.
fry. So what? You go do your own thing.
Would you give me a minute to say what we think will happen to you if you
Do
go
not-
remain on the right-hand path?
Yeah. What's going to happen to me?
Your psyche, your soul, your mind, everything that you are will be destroyed utterly by your submission to the way of the universe. You will
I will be destroyed.
When you die, you will become nothing.
Okay.
Were you to have a flash of revelation and suddenly practice black magic and the left-hand path, you would find the most ancient way to true immortality, which is what the left-hand path is all
Is
about.
the point at which I get a left-hand path altar call?
Exactly.
So you're really saying I've lost it too if I don't turn your way?
But
I just sort of
We-
disappear.
but
I'm gone.
the only-
This isn't our opinion. You don't have to agree.
We know we're both here because we both have radically different opinions. Let's accept that. But the difference is you want to save us from our opinion.
Yes.
We're willing...
No, no. I don't want to save you from your opinion. I want to save you from eternal damnation.
Right.
Not an opinion. Eternity. I really do. Did you do any ceremonies before you came here?
No, actually none.
Why not?
Because...
Oh, you're not sure? You
Oh,
did.
no, what? Before we... I just
don't
want
mean
the definition.
like,
before we
did
came
you whammy
here...
me before you came here tonight?
Okay. You have billed this event as a showdown with Satanism.
Yeah.
That's a completely one-way street. We don't have any interest in whamming you. We haven't cursed you. We don't have a problem with you. This is a healthy way to discuss ancient issues in
And I don't have
hopefully...
a problem with you. It's Set I got a problem with.
Well, we represent Set. We are one with Set.
But
Then
you're
you-
okay. You're okay. I mean, God loves you. I love you. You're human beings. You have dignity, value, and worth. It's the head honcho. It's the bad dude. You know,
But
the dark prince.
bad dude is in me.
What
The bad dude is here in me right now. So if you have something against the bad dude, you've got something against me. You see?
He's there now.
Of course.
Well, if you'd cooperate, I could cast him out.
We completely reject this idea of possession.
That's right, because you're not controlled. You're not possessed.
We control our spiritual being. We control it.
Yeah, it's a question of manipulation,
A question of what?
manipulating our
I
being.
lost her microphone, so you may need to turn it. It's a question of manipulation.
Yeah.
What do you mean it's a question of manipulation?
Well, we do the controlling. We
think?
do the... I see evidence of it, so I more than think.
But what if you're only just being allowed to presume, for now, that you are in control?
For the sake of your argument, you're saying, let's say it comes down to Judgment Day, and the devil comes, takes me, and I wasn't in control after all because the devil was controlling me.
You do understand?
Okay.
Okay, I'm glad.
Yeah, but
That, just for the sake of argument.
Okay,
I don't
okay.
agree, but
Okay,
just for the sake of argument. Fine, at least I went trying. At least in my mind, in my soul, I know I went with my intention being what I wanted it to be, so fine.
Isn't that like bungee jumping off of a 50-foot tower with a 60-foot cord?
well,
That's not the way I see
we've
it.
already said black magic is one of the most dangerous pursuits a human being can engage in. We accept that risk very easily.
But what if it's an
you're-
eternal risk?
Well, what if I put it on the other side of this issue and say, what if you are throwing away your immortal psyche by following Christianity in the right-hand path, which is what we believe. So we both are at an impasse.
Satanism is quite an elitist philosophy. Satanism does not welcome the masses, does not even want the masses. We don't believe people can be converted. We don't want people to be converted. And as I said before, this isn't the kind of thing you should dabble in. This isn't the kind of thing that you should do for kicks, to be funny at a party. Nor do we believe in equality. There's absolute inequality. The concept of equality is an outdated, very romantic idea, but it's impossible. I am not any more equal to you as you are to him in the front row. There is absolutely no such thing as equality, and we have to come to terms with that to understand ourselves more, which, as I said,
This sounds
ourselves...
racist.
Nothing. I didn't say anything about race. I said you, him, and me. Has nothing to do with race. Inequality. Man, woman, unequal.
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 And each individual is not equal to the other, which would be an insult to both of them to say you're both exactly the same. In our view, the religion of Satanism is many thousands of years older than Judeo-Christianity. It is resurfacing now in the world.
In these last days.
You
You
would
can't
like
believe
to-
we're in the last days.
The last days for you.
Before the age of Satan.
The beginning for us. Now,
Well, yeah, I have partial agreement. It is getting toward the end for us and the beginning for you. You just got to understand that when it starts for you, it's not going to last long.
well, that's based on your...
But you don't know that.
There are extremely accomplished and powerful people in the Temple of Set.
Did you hear that? Okay. Accomplished and powerful,
Absolutely.
brilliant.
Because the Temple of Set is based on intellectual knowledge. The Temple of Set focuses on study, on
And
education.
you plan on taking over.
No, we don't
Taking
plan on taking
over?
over. We have no
No.
interest. The world is not our interest, only ourself. Probably the biggest misconception about Satanism, based again on the Bible, is that we are concerned with dominating the world, making others like us. We don't care about that whole issue.
You don't care if we like you.
No.
How do you feel about Jesus?
Well, Temple of Set has studied the idea of Jesus, the historical facts about Jesus, and many of us have come to the conclusion that if one were to analyze what a black magician is, one who goes against the social order of their time, one who breaks with conventions of morality of their time,
You're not going to say what I think you're going to say.
one who declares themselves not to worship a god, but to say, I am a god, is a black magician. And therefore, many of us, and
You heard that.
I would have to thank Edred Thorson for putting this into context.
You're saying
Jesus
Jesus was a black
If
magician.
one were to look at, he was a sorcerer who did things that magicians do.
Well, now, wait a minute.
He,
Wait a minute.
He would,
When any of you black magicians are willing to get crucified and rise again from the dead, I'll believe it.
well, that's,
Big difference. Well, I just mean, he hung out with the unconventional crowd. He hung out with the sinners.
but not only, if you really look at it, because he wanted to save the sinners,
Yes.
but because he himself was a cosmic rebel like Lucifer. So I'm saying Jesus Christ, which merely means, it was not a personal name, it means the anointed one. He declared himself a god. And the point of black magic, left-hand path, Satanism, is to make oneself a god. And he did so in an extremely powerful way.
I understand the thesis. It's just that none of you have ever. Aleister Crowley didn't do it. Michael Aquino hasn't done it. I don't think you've done it. You haven't raised the dead. You haven't walked on water. You haven't cleansed lepers. You haven't opened blind eyes.
Then maybe,
And until you do,
maybe
you have
what-
no right to say what you're
maybe
saying.
what you're saying is Jesus was the most powerful and successful black magician to date.
Or God, very God from eternity past, who died for our sin. I'm sure you're finding this showdown with Satanism very fascinating. Isn't it interesting to see what people who worship the devil really believe? Their philosophy, what's behind why they do what they do? It's frightening, it's disturbing. but we need to know so that we can fight back in the name of Christ against these evil ideologies. Now, during this showdown with Satan, we went to the audience and we let them ask some questions.
Did you have to denounce any other gods or church beliefs and continue to worship or believe in one
There was no...
church?
We didn't have to denounce anything. It was more an acceptance of this thing called Set.
And I should point out, we have been lifelong Satanists, so therefore there was no need to renounce another faith. This has always been our religion. It is now perfected in our understanding in the Temple of Set.
I mean, I was baptized at 3 years old as a Satanist. I was the first documented case as a child baptism as a Satanist. And basically what that ceremony consisted of was a glorification of life and all of the things that bring life into being, rather than a denial or a condemnation of the original sin.
You're telling me that no blasphemies were involved. Yet you do recognize that beyond what I call organized or institutional religious groups like the Church of Satan, Temple of Set, and others, there are self-styled satanic groups who call themselves Satanists who do utter blasphemies.
As much as there are self-styled Christian groups who
We condemn those groups as being ignorant, not based in either historical or religious tradition, and they are anathema to us.
But you've been to ceremonies where nudes have been on altars. You just don't do it now.
I have no problem with that.
You don't have a problem with nudes on an altar, do you?
No.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
That's not an issue of
That's not an
problem.
issue. How about ripping up a Bible?
Well, it's
Ripping up
stupid.
Desecrating a
Okay,
cross?
let me put it this way.
Ripping up
Okay.
a Bible is just
Let
silliness.
me
I
put
mean,
it this way. I don't have any belief in the Bible, so therefore it doesn't do anything for me to rip it up. The idea of an inverted cross, most people associate Satanists with inverted crosses. It has no psychological meaning to me to invert something I don't believe in anyway. So I reject all that.
All right, gentleman in the front row has a question here. Yes.
It's understood by all of us that at some point we're going to die, and according to the Christian tradition, when we die, we're going to go be with the Lord forever. Where are you going to go?
We strive to create our own destiny. We don't believe in the existence of heaven or hell. Hell has no special meaning for us in the Temple of Set or in the left-hand path. We are trying to create our own existence after corporeal death to continue our power in the world. But we don't believe we go to some metaphysical region.
You talked about this entity that's decades old, and you said, how can something decades old be your peer when it knows much more than you do, and how would you know that it's giving you everything when you're still studying?
What I said was the Temple of Set is decades old. Set, the Prince of Darkness, is thousands of years old, earlier than man.
Okay, let this gentleman ask another question. I know it's going to.
The question is, how can you say in the Temple of, Prince of Darkness and all this here, you can't find anything in darkness. If you take no light and you go in the darkness, you find nothing.
Yes, you do. We find ourselves, and in the darkness you find yourself.
How can you find yourself in the dark without running into the wall? I can see in the dark. I mean, the man's making a point. You're in darkness. You don't see when you're in darkness.
And my point is...
Some do.
Do?
Some do.
See in darkness?
Yes.
You mean that literally?
Absolutely.
Oh.
Could it not be, Bob, that the light is blinding if one is looking for your inner self? The darkness is illuminating.
You're looking inside you for darkness.
Yes, which is a positive value to me.
To us.
To you, it is positive to look inside and see darkness.
Yes?
This is Director Zeena. You said that your baptism was to celebrate life.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think gave you that life?
My mother and my father.
She says her
My
mother and her
and
father.
my father, and furthermore, I go even further than that, and I believe that I had the isolate will and the isolate intelligence to draw my mother and father together to create myself.
Wait, whoa, wait, huh?
thereby making me a purely magical child.
But you didn't hear what she's saying. Shh, quiet. You said you had the isolate will to draw your mother and father together to create you, to make you a magical child. You're saying that before you were born, before you were conceived,
that's my personal belief,
okay,
yes.
you were some type of ethereal identity that existed in the spirit world or wherever, and that you drew them together to make you so you could take life form to become a sorceress?
The sorceress that I exist as today could not have happened if it weren't from the best combination of the genetic material that I had to work with of my two progenitors. So in a sense, I chose them.
So you're suggesting some type of pre-existence, spiritual pre-existence.
We believe that we have created ourselves and that we are developing that knowledge of our godhood further. And that process in the Temple of Set is referred to by the Egyptian word kepher, which means to come into being. So if you're saying, are we denying that God, Jehovah, gave us life? Yes, we are.
God in his word says that he is the beginning and the end. How did Set become to be?
Well, we believe, just as we believe that we have created ourselves through our will, Set was the first to create himself and thus set the model for all black magicians to come. This example of, through willpower, creating yourself and making yourself into a god.
Well, I don't want to get real deep here, but I'm not sure I understand. Set made himself into something out of nothing?
Basically, yes, because that is the magical process.
So you're believing then, like we believe, that Jesus Christ has the power to create out of nothing. That Set too has the power to create out of nothing.
Well, this is getting back to the similarity between certain elements of Jesus Christ and black magical practice, in that Christ, as a magician, which he is described in the Bible, creates out of nothing. The kingdom of heaven is within him, which is a very satanic statement.
What was there before there was Set?
That isn't really a relevant question to...
I think the a priori question of understanding what was before there was anything is a very important philosophical and religious question.
It's an interesting philosophical discussion, but I don't think we have the time to answer it here. The point is, we believe that Set was the first black magician and Set the prototype for all black magicians to come.
Yeah, I wanted to know if you drink blood at any time to gain power.
Or have you ever drunk blood to gain
yeah.
power? Have you ever done that?
No, it's not something that is prescribed in satanic ritual to drink blood. That is largely a urban legend or a myth.
But Satanists do. I deal with kids all the time.
No, but that's
self-styled
okay. But
Satanists who do that.
don't.
You know they do that. Claim to be Satanists.
Self-styled Satanists you're talking about have basically taken your Christian negative interpretations of Satanism, and
You're blaming us for them?
In the Bible it says, I eat of the flesh, I drink of the blood, and maybe some other younger children that don't necessarily understand this think, oh, I should literally eat of the flesh, drink of the blood, and so they'll drink blood.
That's not quite they do it.
In an inversion.
Blood drinking.
Have you ever done that?
Have I ever done that? No, I'm talking about the people you're referring to that you
We do not.
say,
You've got to
surely they
understand. We despise these self-styled Satanists who give our religion a bad name.
Yeah, you people are fairly dignified compared to them.
I mean, it would be
They're wackos.
It would be like
You're
saying,
just strange.
It would be like saying to you, if I were to judge your behavior by Jim Jones and say, well, Jim Jones does this, he was a Christian, you must be like that too.
I'm puzzled because I want you to explain what is the value of what you're doing.
The value of what we are doing is to transform ourselves into the masters of our own destiny and self-deify ourselves, actually become a god. That is what we believe is the value of black magic and of our religion.
And that may be the most important thing that you've said all night. I mean, that
Well,
must
that
be the
sums
most
up-
salient point that you've made.
that sums up what we're
But
talking
sure you do understand. I mean, you have read about the serpent in the garden, that was the first lie. You eat this fruit, and you will be a god.
Part of the temple.
I mean, this is an
No,
old
no,
You're
lie.
still
that's a very
using
good
this
thing.
book, which is
Let me-
irrelevant
let me-
to
let me-
us.
But it's there. It's in the book.
Look,
It
okay,
doesn't matter. It's irrelevant
myth-
to us. We can't get
the
that
myth
through
of
to
the
you
garden-
No,
enough.
I understand it's
The
irrelevant,
myth,
but you...
the myth of the Garden of Eden is not originally a Judaic or Christian myth. It comes from Babylon.
Well,
The Babylonian version of this very ancient myth represents Eve as being heroic for eating of the fruit of knowledge, and knowledge,
that's Satan's side of the story.
it's where the Babylonian myth comes from. The
The
snake and the
Babylonian myth
serpent.
is a perversion of the original story when it actually happened as an event.
If you were to talk to each person here, I think you'd find as many different stories as there are people. They've come out of different lifestyles, different experiences. It seems to me that you are a product of your environment because that you followed one path your entire life.
Well-
you talk about individuation, and I wonder how much you have opened yourself to the possibilities of other ways.
Well, that may be at first glance, but the fact is, I was not the only person that was born in the environment that I was raised in or reared in. However, I am the only individual that remains to this day as a black magician, as a sorceress, as a priestess of Set. My father, or my progenitor, I should say, was basically an atheist who liked the trappings, who played with the trappings. And that got him somewhere for a while, but in the end he was consumed by it. My half-sister, reared in the exact same environment, she could be sitting in this room. She's no different than any average person walking down the street. My son, raised in the same environment, he wants to be an everyday guy. So at first glance, it may seem like, oh, I was raised in this strange environment. How could I possibly be anything but? But the fact is, human nature being what it is, I could have rebelled and become a Jesus freak. I could have joined an existentialist group. But the point is, through all the choices that I could have had, that I could have done, this is still where I am, and this is where I intend to be for the rest of my life.
So you're wanting us to know you are what you are who you are, because in addition to feeling as though there were some pre-existing conditions that determine your genetics, you now, by an act of your will, decide to continue to be who you are. Correct?
Right.
And you're proud of that.
Very proud of it.
Do you consider the possibility you could change?
No.
What do you do during Halloween and Christmas?
Halloween and Christmas. Ah.
Well,
Let's try Halloween first.
To be perfectly honest, we have our own holidays that are usually of personal importance to us. So we don't necessarily take a universally accepted holiday such as Christmas and celebrate it just because it's the 25th.
Do you give away presents at Christmas?
No.
No, absolutely not.
No.
We do give away presents in the spirit of the winter solstice, and as you know, December 25th, as the arbitrary birthday of Jesus Christ, was decided upon by the Catholic Church so that the pagans could understand, let's put this Jesus idea over the earlier idea.
But the fact is, if we choose to celebrate his birth and recognize and commemorate it.
That's fine, but we do.
So what about Halloween?
Holidays in general.
What Halloween? I want to know. Halloween.
Usually Halloween, we're the ones providing the entertainment for others. I would love to take a Halloween off. and go and do something fun for ourselves.
Well, what do you do?
Well, usually we have performed
Last
Radio
year,
Werewolf
for
on
example,
Halloween.
we had a seance last year at Hell House of Hollywood. We always
You had a
do
seance.
always
Well,
do.
anybody show up? Anybody I know?
No one you know.
Did anyone show up at the seance?
Well, it was a seance to contact Aleister Crowley, Sharon,
Did who?
Sharon Tate.
Sharon Tate. Did Charlie ask you to do that?
No,
No.
Did Sharon show up?
he did.
Sharon showed up. And the baby?
No.
No, baby didn't show up. You know, Charlie killed, well, his people killed Sharon Tate, the actress. So, Sharon have anything interesting to say? Like,
No, not particularly.
did Aleister show up?
He did.
That doesn't surprise me. And Aleister have anything? You remember the famous Satanist, Mr. the B666?
Well, he wasn't a Satanist, but...
Well, okay. But he showed up, but did he
But
just
the point is, Halloween...
sort of say, like, I wish I hadn't done all those drugs and killed myself? And
No, the point is about Halloween. You know, when it's Easter, I'm sure you have plenty of work to do. When it's
oh, I'm busy at Easter,
right.
and I'm
Right.
even busier at Halloween.
Right, well,
Let's see.
It's my busiest time of the year. Gentlemen over there, yeah.
You were saying earlier that people who don't practice what you believe, when they die, they just are nothing. Is that correct?
basically, yeah.
Okay. One of us is right and one of us is wrong. There is a truth here. And my belief is that if you don't follow Jesus Christ, you will go to hell. You will burn forever. You will feel it. It will be very real.
Right. We are aware of that.
If you're right, if your religion is the truth, I'll take the risk of being wrong.
Well, that's exactly...
If my religion is true, are you willing to take the risk of being wrong and burning in hell forever?
I said I am more than willing to take that risk, and if this tyrant, this Jehovah exists,
Tyrant?
that your Bible describes, I would have to be against him if he existed. I don't believe he exists, so yes, I would take that chance
What you
gladly.
call tyranny is your choice, sir. You blame God for something that you freely choose to do. We heard Zeena a moment ago say,
no.
I am what I am. I'm proud to be what I am, and I always will be what I am.
Right, but...
But that exertion of her will, if it then leads to eternal perdition, is certainly not God's fault. If she burns in hell, she's made the choice, right, Zeena?
That's not what he was
on the contrary, I'm saying I take complete responsibility for my decision to be what I am spiritually, and I accept the consequences completely. Understanding, I don't believe at all in the Judeo-Christian mythology of heaven and hell and sin. And as I've said, I'm sure you mean well in your harping on this theme, but it doesn't affect me.
Well, it could affect you for all of eternity, and the risk that you're willing to take is really a very hollow assertion.
But again...
In lieu of the fact you're talking about something that you can't even begin to comprehend.
But I'm saying, if you continue on the right-hand path, you explained earlier how Buddhism and Hinduism lead to dissolution into nothingness. As far as I can see in Christianity, it shares that same idea of, your idea of heaven is to no longer be.
Oh, not, quite the contrary. No,
subsumed.
the Scripture says we will be known as we are known. I expect to be a recognizable identity, to have a glorified, risen body.
Well, then
it'll have some improvements, but it'll be, it'll be a heavenly body. But I will have it. And I'm going to, know my loved ones who have gone on before me and others.
I think this is a dead end. I believe in my concept of immortality. You believe in yours.
And though what you heard may have been a little frightening and even a little shocking, I want you to remember this. No matter what the devil says or does, he has been defeated in the name of Jesus.